Hey, Sarah.
Hi, Eric. How's it going?
Great. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for being willing to do this for us. Appreciate it. It looks like we have our folks here. So if we're gonna, oh wait, we still have a few pouring on. Hang on, just let's give it another couple seconds.
Okay.
All right, that is a couple seconds. All right, thank you everyone that's on here for this webinar. We're really appreciative that Eric Forsch can be with us. So Eric is the Broadband Manager. Am I correct? Did I mix it up?
It's close enough.
Department of Broadband.
Whatever terms you want to use.
He's the boss of broadband in the state of Idaho. He works in the under the direction of the Commerce department. But he has been looking intensely at the new IIJA, which stands for Infrastructure and Investment and Jobs Act, bipartisan bill that was passed at the federal level, which could be a lot of good stuff for counties, assuming it all gets funded. So with that being said, without any further ado, Eric, I'd like to just turn the time right over to you and you can get going.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. And of course, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this and open for questions. And I'm going to kind of show, as Sarah's been through a couple of my presentations already, she knows I like showing pictures and data. So if you have questions about it, or if you have questions about, you need information in the future, don't hesitate to reach out. So let me share my screen and we will get going. Perfect. Sarah, you can see it? Great. Yep. Okay, perfect. So again, talking today about Capital Projects Fund, local ARPA funds, and IIJA or BEAD, which is the broadband portion of the infrastructure bill and the infrastructure bill in general. So there's a lot of money. It's an exciting time to be in the space of broadband. I guess I should say that a lot with a little bit more excitement. It's a very, very exciting time to be in broadband right now, just because there's so much stuff going on, and it's absolutely, it's a little crazy, to be honest. So, but again, like when we talk about broadband and why it's so important, there's so much stuff going on, and I think really because of the pandemic, really things have, that's really what made everyone aware that there's so many gaps. So this is, so I think why, every single county, every single city, all of our legislators, and especially when you kind of understand why major legislation was passed in this country and why people are putting money towards broadband, the reason is because the pandemic really, and people working from home really, really brought it to attention that the existing infrastructure in this country is not adequate for a lot of people's needs. So when we talk about, broadband, what is broadband? So broadband's just, it's high speed, reliable internet, and it's an internet connection that allows you to talk to the world, right? So it can be delivered multiple different sort of technologies. So it can be fiber, fixed wireless, DSL, cable, satellite, low orbit satellite. So there's a whole lot of different technologies that are involved. And then the things I think, especially for counties, what you need to think about is that the way that this kind of these things are made up and what the two components are that you need to think about is, one, what's your middle mile infrastructure look like? So this is an image of Zayo's. They're a middle mile provider, so they provide backhaul services, and you'll have other providers, other ISPs that lease bandwidth from them. What's your middle mile infrastructure look like in your area and through your county? So basically, what are your broadband highways that run through, and who owns them, who controls them, and what do they look like? And then what are your options to build more broadband highways? And then of course, the other component is last mile. So how does that get from the highways to the homes or locations or schools or city halls or hospitals or libraries or schools, all of those things? That how you get from the highways to the last mile is the really crucial component. You can always have middle mile infrastructure everywhere, but the last mile is the most expensive. Why? Well, because it was funny. I was just in American Falls last week, touring their project they're building out in their downtown. And you could see they had this huge, well, they had about $1 million worth of machinery and equipment out there. They were doing micro trenching along the downtown streets. And they're basically taking it's like a giant tile saw, essentially going down the street, carving out a fine little, just a little channel right there in the asphalt, and then burying the fiber so they could then connect. You think about having to lay, I don't know, 10 miles, 5 miles worth of fiber in a downtown, and you're taking a saw and you're cutting through all that asphalt. Those sorts of costs, just in terms of investing in people and contracting with people to do that work, adds up. So again, when you talk about kind of the infrastructure and what it looks like from a practical, standpoint in your community. So again, you have fixed wireless, which is kind of uses radio waves to kind of connect to households, especially in rural communities. You see, we've seen a lot of growth in fixed wireless service. You're able to kind of cover, especially in these rural communities, you can cover areas, 10, 20 miles or so with fixed wireless coverage. The challenge with fixed wireless is that the farther away you get from where the tower is, the slower the speeds. The other challenge with a lot of fixed wireless infrastructure is that if it's relayed through another, fixed wireless relay, so it's like dish to location, the more dishes there are between between the household and where the original source is for that fiber infrastructure, the amount of bandwidth kind of goes down. So this is going to be kind of a challenge that's going to be fixed with new legislation, but just kind of understand that one of the challenges with fixed wireless is that it's great and it's a lower cost option for delivering broadband to rural communities. It's just you have issues of trees, distance, mountains, and other things that kind of can impact how effective and how reliable that broadband connection is. Mobile broadband is something else you're going to see increasing more and more. We have companies, obviously, like all the cellular companies, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, all of them are expanding their mobile broadband access. And they're going to be incorporating these into their cellular packages. So instead of you having a cell phone package and then where you have an unlimited data plan, you're going to be bundling in like a home modem. So you're basically building off everything together. You're starting to see this already with T-Mobile. You're starting to see this with Verizon, and you'll see this more with AT&T. So this will be another great option for your communities. It doesn't mean you shouldn't be investing in building more infrastructure in your community. It just means that hopefully your community will have more options going forward, which is great. Cable is one of it's a little bit older technology, but still provides high-speed broadband speeds. Cable's kind of one of those things that's more available in your communities. If you're in a city and you have Sparklight or Cox or Spectrum, that's cable broadband. DSL is one of the oldest technologies out there using phone lines. It's definitely being phased out and replaced by fiber by companies such as Ziply. And really, if your community has DSL, and that's the only thing that's not adequate for current or future needs. The other thing to kind of keep in mind is low orbit satellite, which is being built out right now, most notably with Starlink. But you're going to see Amazon's partnership with Verizon really taking off in the coming years. And these are providing higher speeds, lower latency than conventional satellites, which is still really, really good option for your communities and something that people in your community should take advantage of. But I don't think it's an excuse for not building out more infrastructure. And then, of course, the most important thing to think about is fiber infrastructure and how to encourage more fiber infrastructure in your area, because essentially what your community needs to be relevant for future decades is more fiber infrastructure. And all these things rely on more fiber infrastructure. So the way, just to kind of, when we're talking about the future broadband funding and kind of, you see with two major bills, the ARPA, and you see in the definitions that are outlined in ARPA, and then the infrastructure bill, both those bills put an emphasis on deploying fiber. Well, the reason is because you have technologies such as mobile broadband and 5G. All these things will require more fiber infrastructure in the ground, because in order to have like driverless cars, you're going to have more kind of transmission, like, like antennas deployed, across freeways and across downtowns, and all these things are going to be important. But to have that and be able to kind of deploy those sorts of things is going to require more fiber technology. Fixed wireless, low orbit satellite, all these things require more fiber infrastructure as a backbone. So it all kind of revolves around itself. And so that's why you always want to think about, how can I bring more fiber infrastructure into my community? This is just a fun example of what some of these things look like. On the left is a fixed wireless tower. We did that in North Idaho. Again, on the right is when you're putting conduit and you're blowing fiber into the ground to do fiber installation into a community. This is Victor on the right. So anyways, you can kind of get an image of why it's so expensive. Trenching under homes and under sidewalks and streets is not cheap. The other thing, I think, just again, we're talking about, I always want to remind communities to you need to think about, when you're talking about broadband access and what your community has and what your community doesn't have. And when you're kind of planning, you got to think about these three components. You can have infrastructure in the ground, and we certainly see this, but you may not have people adopting it or using it. So if you've paid all this money and put broadband infrastructure in the ground, but people aren't using it, why have you done that? So you need these other components to be put into place so that actually people use it and take advantage of it and build off the infrastructure that's there. You won't have, for example, if you have citizens that, for example, affordability, right? So affordability is that huge component. So you could pay hundreds of million, or a couple $1 million to put fiber infrastructure in the ground. But if the ISP that's providing it is charging $150 a month for 25/3 service, no one's going to pay for that. So all of a sudden you've spent a lot of money to have fiber infrastructure in the ground that no one's using and no one's going to leverage. Because again, the important thing is kind of encouraging more ISPs to invest in areas where they haven't been before, and then make sure that people are adopting and being able to kind of use it at their home. The other component of this is adoption. So again, do people know how to sign up for the internet? Do they know how to, set up a modem in their house? Again, can they, all these sorts of things are important and relevant when you're thinking about broadband adoption and take rates, which is basically the number of people when you have when an ISP goes into a community and they say, we're going to build out and spend X number of dollars, the take rate is the number of subscribers they expect to get when they build out. So if you don't have those sorts of things, if you have those kind of limitations from adoption, you're going to kind of struggle to either attract new ISPs to your area, or and make a less reliable business case. So kind of think about all these three things together when you're kind of crafting plans and thinking about what you're trying to do to kind of bridge the digital divide in your county. Always want to kind of harp on a little bit about speeds and why speeds are super important. Again, the crucial component here, why everyone was kind of concerned about broadband and why it really kind of became a pinch point, wasn't because of download speeds. All the networks are really designed for faster download speeds, right? Because we've all been streaming Netflix for the past 10, 15 years. Well, 10 years, sorry. So networks like cable networks are really set up to handle streaming and downloading videos. What they're not set up is for that upload speeds, which is where everyone was kind of, when they were working from home, they were trying to do. So if you look at here at video conferencing from the group call, 720 HD, you see the 2.6 megabit upload requirement. So if you're paying for service in rural Idaho and your capacity is 25 megabits down, 3 megabits up, you're going to experience issues if you're trying to video conference or you're doing a video conference call. When you kind of start talking about things like gaming, where it's highly interactive, you're going to see more requirements, right? Where your speeds are, especially 25/3 wouldn't be able to kind of handle that. And of course, when you start talking about things like augmented reality or virtual reality or the metaverse, which is really, the new buzzword too, that's going on right now as well, all those things are going to require higher bandwidths. And so your communities need this infrastructure just to kind of ensure that they have the opportunities to take advantage of new economic opportunities down the road. So again, this kind of highlights my point here.
Hey, Eric.
Yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
Real quick question on the slide before.
Yeah.
Is that when on streaming, for example, we know at my house, there's usually more than one stream going on at the same time. Is that including that, or is that just talking about if you had, you're all sitting around and watching one Netflix show together?
That's one. So that's a great question. So this is one. So, right. So if you had, like in video conference call, if you were doing multiple video conference calls, you could be using 2 to, 5.1 megabits upload. That's where, right. And that's where, especially during the pandemic, when you had kids at home doing distance learning and a parent also doing video conferencing at the same time, everyone's like, hey, this isn't working. Why isn't this working? I have internet. I don't understand. And it's because the networks weren't set up for this, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, even to do, like, when you talk about 4K streaming or HD streaming, again, if you have, and certainly I have situations where I have family members who are in Twin Falls, not Twin Falls isn't what I call rural Idaho, and they're like, we have 3 kids at home who are all gamers, and they're like, their internet struggles to handle it because they have 3 kids who are doing video games at the same time. Again, like that's a kind of a luxury if I compare that to other areas of the state that are certainly more remote than that. But again, those are opportunities, and we want to make sure. I don't think that bandwidth requirement's that far in the future for most people. So, anyways. But yeah, this kind of shows you just the trajectory that we're seeing from more connected households and the amount of bandwidth. So again, you're seeing like the number of devices that people own in a house. Certainly in my house, like we no longer, I don't have a traditional cable service. I don't have satellite or anything like that. Everything's streamed. We have usually like running Apple TVs, plus my wife is on her iPad. That's kind of typical, right? So it's like, again, that to me is where you see things headed in the future. So you want to kind of enable those sorts of opportunities for those communities. So when we talk about, again, just kind of, I'm going to go through some data here and some charts and some maps. I want to make sure though, don't, anyways, so make sure to ask questions if you have any, but the kind of issues that we have here is a lot. When I look at kind of what, this is the FCC data. So as updated last December or last October, the challenges that we have in this state, there's a lot, but it's hard to get a real good sense on where the gaps are, except we know that really in rural areas across the state, that's where broadband infrastructure is needed the most. So FCC indicates it could be as low as 83,000 people, but Microsoft, using their speed test data, say it's around 670,000 people. So between that, that's quite a big gap, but you kind of assume that it's somewhere in the middle. And then if you're estimating like a cost, I mean, that you could be looking at, $100 million to hundreds of billions of dollars at least, or if not $1 billion more to connect all Idahoans to 120. So there's going to be a lot of investment that's needed in this state. I'm excited for the broadband money that's coming down the pipeline, but I don't think it's going to solve everything or the entire gap that's out there.
Hey, Eric, it looks like we have a question
Yep.
from one of our commissioners. What is the requirement going to be for public safety communications for dispatch utilization utilizing wireless capacity or capability?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know that exact definition. I just know that for future infrastructure projects, what's going to happen is that the requirement is 100 symmetrical speeds, and then if that's not possible, 120 scalable to 100 symmetrical. So but I can research that question and get an answer and talk to Emergency 911 and see what they're thinking too. So
that would be great, Eric, because I know all of our counties have public safety communication needs. So
yeah.
If you can find that out, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
We have another question.
Go ahead. I'm just gonna write. I'm just gonna write a note here. Just
Great.
Okay.
Is the state going to partner with GEO partners for the analytics? I'm guessing.
Well, I mean, we haven't gone out for procurement for anything yet, so it's hard to say who we're gonna partner with, just because it's still kind of early stages. But we have a lot of data too, so I'll kind of show you what we have and what we can do. And so again, that's, at least you get a sense of what's available now, and then we'll see what happens in the future. I think as far as kind of like geo partners, some of their mapping stuff is well, it's useful, and I'm happy to have conversations about it if you want to schedule some time with me. So just reach out. Yes, there's a chart. I just kind of give you a sense of median download speeds reported by states. This kind of gives you an idea about where Idaho sits in comparison to other states. So, our most, I think our neighbor that's most similar to us is Utah. So you look at kind of where the average, like the median download speeds from Ookla are in Utah compared to Idaho. And there's a significant difference even across MLab and FCC advertised speeds. And so we look kind of a little bit closer to Wyoming and Montana, so a little bit rural. This is why I think you see Montana making a big push into broadband as well. They didn't do a lot of investment under CARES Act, but they're now taking some, they're definitely taking some ARPA dollars and investing more into broadband.
Hey,
look here,
Eric,
so yeah.
Can you go back to that last slide? Can you explain what each of those are?
Yes.
Like, what is Ookla? What is the FCC form?
So Ookla's a data set. So these are, so Ookla and MLab are two different speed tests. Ookla is their own proprietary speed test platform. So you can go to speedtest.net and you can take a speed test. We pay for this data. I will show you what some of this data looks like in a couple slides. And then NTIA is using Ookla median data to kind of incorporate into their mapping platform as well. So, and you can see this on NTIA's indicators of broadband need map. So it's just basically what speed tests indicate is when you log onto your computer, you run a speed test, it pings another computer. So it's basically testing how like your internet capabilities are. So how fast data can kind of transfer between computers. So what this does is that because it's median, it basically takes for like the entire state, it takes all the speed tests in the state and then does the median, so the middle of all those speed tests for the entire year. And that's how it calculates information. MLab is a Google platform, so it's similar, but the way they calculate stuff is slightly different from Ookla, so that's why the numbers are different. And then the FCC takes, this is the median advertised speed. So it's a little bit different calculation than these other two, because it's not speed tests, it's just what the ISPs are telling the FCC, and then does what the average of those are.
Okay, and then one more question that I see on here is relating to Montana. Do you know if the state is investing or counties in Montana?
I assume they are, but I can ask their broadband director when I'm done. So.
Okay, thanks.
This is, so here when you look at, when you're looking here at, so this is the percent of population without access to broadband speed. So in Idaho, the percent of population in Idaho without access to 25.3 is from, this is FCC's data. It's, so they're calculating about 45,000, 46,000 people here. And then the percentage of population without access to 120, which is now going to be the new threshold for served in terms of broadband definitions. That's, see here 24.4%, or probably close to, 450,000 people. So quite a lot. And again, when you look at kind of the numbers that we have in terms of ruralness and high speed broadband access, again, we look kind of close to Montana, when in actuality, I want to look a little bit closer to Utah, who looks a little bit closer to Washington, Oregon. So anyways, but it's just kind of a helpful sort of comparison. And again, the other thing to kind of think about this, don't forget affordability. Affordability is a component of all this. Again, if people can't afford the internet, they're not going to use it, not going to pay for it. So here you have average monthly cost of internet by state. Again, we're one of the highest. Montana is the only one that beats us out. So again, we have some work to do. Again, I'd like to look a little bit more like Utah rather than Montana. So no offense to my friends in Montana. We're working hard. Again, this is just a map. This is our NBAM. This is NTIA's mapping product. This is what we have access to. So I can, if you need data, just let me know and I can send some to you. When you're kind of looking at this by county, this is kind of what the breakdown and you know, average median speeds, you know, look like for Idaho by county. Again, it's no surprise that urban counties have higher broadband speeds on average, but then when you get to more rural areas, especially the areas like Boise and Adams are particularly bad. You know, but you know, the areas in rural Magic Valley are really bad too, which is areas that we need work. So a lot of work to do across the state. When you kind of look, like I pulled up some of these maps just to kind of do some comparisons between other states, because it's kind of the usefulness of this mapping platform. So here in the right corner, you can see Coeur d'Alene and Post Falls, and down here you can see Moscow. Just kind of give you a sense of where Washington is and where their metros are compared to ours. So again, you see a little bit more investment in infrastructure. You see higher speeds being, you know, being deployed in those states. And, you know, you see a little bit more, the colors are a little bit darker shades of pink, which indicate higher speeds than what we see in Idaho. Again, something similar here. So you look at Boise. So in downtown Boise and in the metro area, generally you have some pretty decent, you have some good speeds. But once you get out to the rural areas, it drops off quite a bit. And again, where median download speeds are below 10, that's really not adequate for anybody, right? That's in Adams County and Washington County in particular are really that's a really challenging area that we need to look at, as well as Boise. Again, when you kind of look at metro areas again, so looking at Boise and you compare that to Salt Lake, you can kind of get a really good idea of what we would like this to look like. Where you see the dark red are the really fast speeds that you'd want to see more of in downtown Boise. Again,
Eric, did I see that right? Boise doesn't have any of
that's
the
right.
dark?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Right. So and this is the legend, right? So above 100 megabits on average in the download speeds, and this is getting better in Boise. We've seen improvement across the state again, but just kind of letting people know where we were and where we want to go. This data all this data lines up the FCC data, so it's December of 2020, so it's a little bit old, but it's still helpful. It's a good benchmark to kind of give you an idea of where we're at.
Thanks, Eric. The reason I ask is because I think most of our members probably aren't too concerned about Boise that are on this call, but I think it gives a nice overview of if it's not that great in Boise, what is it like in the rest of the state?
Yeah, well, and you look at, I mean, you saw, everyone should see the news clip. I mean, Ada County is looking to do, they're looking to do some middle mile infrastructure through the county. Again, like those are sorts of kind of projects where they can kind of build out some infrastructure and leverage to bring in more opportunities to your point, Sarah, into Boise. Boise pretty much has, in pockets, in most of the area, they have 2 providers, and then a lot of areas they have, in a couple areas they have 3. So it's it's a little bit of a challenge at times. You'd like to see a metropolitan area like Boise have 4. Certainly you see this in Coeur d'Alene or Idaho Falls, which has more providers than Boise does in general. And here again, kind of looking when you talk about some of the rural problems that we have in the state, you look here at the southern half of the state. Look at Twin Falls and Pocatello. I know Jeff Huff has been looking at some of this information that I've sent him, but you can kind of look, when you look out from Pocatello and look at kind of on average where, speeds are compared to what it looks like, in around northern Utah, you can see again that we kind of fall a little bit short. So again, that's where we kind of want to get to and want to keep improving. This is the one, so this is the one of Rexburg and Idaho Falls. Again, in Idaho Falls, the coverage is actually really good. In Rexburg, it's really good too. But we'll have to kind of keep pushing to do better coverage, especially up near Fremont County is an area that's we definitely want to look at. So one of the things that we've been so I just want to highlight here, this is this is our Ookla data that we have access to. So it's proprietary, so I'm permitted to share, to talk about this map, but it's hard for me to share a lot of other data. So if you have a request or you have some questions, you want to see some stuff, reach out to me. But this is a map kind of showing the transition that we've done in the state from 19 to 2021. So again, to Sarah's point, what she's asking about speed tests. So speed tests take their median speeds. So again, it's what is a computer what is a computer able to, how fast is data able to transfer from one computer to another? And then remember too, with speed tests, is they're always impacted by technology and subscription. So if I'm in a house and I'm only paying my maximum broadband monthly plan limits me to 50 megabits a month, that's gonna, if I run a speed test, that might impact my reporting. Or if I have my modem in one corner of the house and I run a speed test in the other corner of the house, that might impact how I report my speeds. But in aggregate, when you're compiling all these different sorts of tests over the entire state, over an entire year, these are the sorts of pictures that you get. And so I think that what this shows you is that we've made substantial progress. From 19 to 21, you could see a lot less red across the entire state, which is the 10, speeds registering 10 or below. And you see a lot more yellow and you see a lot more green. In 2020, we did $38 million in CARES Act grants, and the speeds for the household side of things was to deploy technology of at least 25.3. So I think the fact that you're seeing that being deployed is highly encouraging and highly exciting for me. I've started to kind of see in pockets some of the 2021 grants kind of pop up there on the speeds, but they won't show up in these just because they're year data. So it's the year's worth of data. But this is really exciting. And I think what I would say to this too is that it really is a testament, because I don't think we would have made this much progress without the governor forming the broadband task force in 2019, us forming all these relationships at that time, having the vision to kind of and the ambition to create a broadband grant in 2020, and then all the support that we've received from the governor's office, from the legislature, having a broadband advisory board, all of this stuff means that we've been able to kind of make some progress and have some significant impacts across the state. So again, it's kind of encouraging for me and kind of exciting. Yeah, so anyways, hooray for us. Okay, so anyways, so I'll talk about a little bit about some of the meat and potatoes aspect of the infrastructure bill. Just to kind of highlight too, if you want to understand where some of the grants where the existing infrastructure is, we have this map on our website. So if you need to look for it, or if you need a link to it, just let me know. But all these dots kind of represent where we've funded. So again, it's you're kind of looking to leverage existing projects, which we saw some of this year with the 2021 CARES Act grants, and I expect more to happen. Or, for example, what happened with American Falls. American Falls leveraged used their local ARPA funds and leveraged projects that we did in 2020 to then build out fiber to the home in their downtown. So again, think about where these dots are, where your projects, like where we may have funded projects before, and how you can leverage those to build off that infrastructure. Whoops.
Eric,
yep.
We have a really good question from a clerk in Blaine County, and it is considering the present risk environment regarding cybersecurity and infrastructure vulnerability. Has there been any consideration into including any requirements for recipients to meet certain security standards in order to participate in Commerce's broadband grant programs on the municipal or provider level? And are you working with the governor's new cybersecurity task force?
Yes. Yes, we are, obviously, because it's in the governor's cybersecurity task force in our office. I've been very much more cognizant about cybersecurity issues going forward. And I think we will be looking to kind of bring in some technical aspects of that into future grants. And certainly there's some, you see that with the Treasury guidance and the IIJA. Both of them are requiring that you source or you follow national security guidelines, which means you're not buying Huawei technology anymore. So that's just it's a one example, basically, of kind of like the next steps being implemented to kind of make some changes. Certainly that's where I will want to see, and communities will want to kind of prioritize fiber infrastructure, especially connecting to city services and county services. You know, there's you know, having wireless connections is really good for connecting a lot of locations such as households in your community, but you want to make sure that I think anything involving the county or the city is locked up tight as possible. So yeah, we'll be definitely partnering in it, and we're definitely thinking about it. Nothing, I don't have anything written in stone yet, but it's definitely something we're looking at. Just to kind of give you, so we have the obviously I think all of you are familiar with the Idaho Broadband Advisory Board. We're working right now on our statewide broadband plan. Again, kind of remembering the buckets of money that's available is that we have $35 million in state funds that have yet to be allocated. There's going to be $118 million if approved by the legislature for the Capital Projects Fund, which is part of ARPA. And then, of course, there's $100 million plus for the infrastructure bill that we're waiting on the full amount, but we'll know probably later on this year. So again, we're talking about,
Eric,
yep.
Really quick, it looks like we have one more cybersecurity question.
Okay.
Where can you find the cybersecurity wireless requirements? Like from the national level, I'm assuming, because you said that there are national security considerations that ARPA and IIJA are requiring.
Yeah, I'll send the the technology component is fairly vague, but it's in the guidance, in the Treasury guidance, and I can send it to you, Sarah. Okay. So and then can you the wireless thing is something that I've heard from lots of businesses and just kind of on discussions that I've had. Okay. Just as a kind of reminder, but I'm sure we'll get some recommendations too from the task force, and it may not hurt. I think something maybe kind of interesting to explore would be chatting with ITS, you know, for the state, and seeing if they have any recommendations or best practices for counties or cities too. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's a good idea.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So write that down too. So anyway, so we're looking at, I think for a lot of counties and cities, you know, again, you have the good news is that the final guidance came out from Treasury. It seems like a month ago, but it was only 2 weeks ago. And they changed the requirements, and they made it a lot more flexible and favorable. But now broadband projects must deliver speeds of 100 symmetrical, or if that's not feasible, 120 that's scalable to 100 symmetrical. Now defines project areas without reliable access to 100 symmetrical, which essentially means nearly anything in Idaho except where there's fiber infrastructure. That's essentially what that means, because all the other areas in the state without fiber infrastructure can't meet that requirement. So if you have, for example, if you have cable infrastructure is designed to kind of do gigabit symmetrical down like 940 and maybe 50 up. So it can't hit that. So anyways, that your project has no boundaries anymore. And the other cool thing too, I think, getting back to Blaine County's question, you can do cybersecurity, you can modernize your cybersecurity infrastructure with ARPA dollars too, which is a new thing that was added in there. So providers must participate in the FCC's Affordable Connectivity Program. That's important to kind of, so if you're partnering with an ISP, they need to be members of Lifeline, more than likely, and they need to be participating in this program, which is basically the new Emergency Broadband Benefit Program. And what that program does is it prevents a low-cost option or affordable broadband option to subscribers, and gives people a discount of $30 a month on their broadband bill. This component here carries across all the other federal guidelines. So all ISPs, I'm telling all the ISPs that they need to be participating in this now, but just keep that in mind because it's an important component. They prioritize that broadband delivers to locations and households, and encourages recipients to prioritize support for broadband networks open or networks owned, operated, or affiliated with local governments, nonprofits, and cooperatives. So there's incentive there to kind of, a priority to incentivize work with local municipalities or cooperatives. You know, that could be like an electric co-op. It could be, you know, maybe a municipally owned or communities forming their own municipal broadband projects, things like that. So there's a lot of kind of different sort of requirements on here, but basically this means that there's a lot of opportunities. And if the community is interested in doing a broadband project, Yeah, it's a great time to do it. So ARPA, Capital Projects Fund, again, this is a separate pool of money that was given directly to counties and cities. This will go through the Broadband Advisory Board. The money that went directly to cities and counties does not. So you can involve me. You don't have to involve me. You can ask for my advice. I'll happily give it. Just let me know. But you can work on everything, and yeah, as you see fit. So that's kind of the beauty of those projects. But again, the criteria here is very similar to what you saw under the local government dollars. So there's not, basically it's very similar. And just again, think about, these are going to be, you're going to have to deliver high-speed broadband. So there's going to be an emphasis on fiber deployment. And then if it's not fixed wire, if it's going to have to be fixed wireless, that fixed wireless has to be fed by towers. So what this means in practical purposes, that it just means this project's going to be expensive. In terms of a per household, you could see anywhere from like $3,000 to more, depending on how rural the area is. And even with the fixed wireless, it could be a couple grand per household for that fixed wireless project. So it's just projects going to be, and especially with supply chain just kind of tightening up a lot, projects going to be more expensive, and that's just what we understand is going to happen. But yeah, so anyways, but it's a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity. That's a lot of money to kind of connect rural Idaho. So be excited. And if you're not working with your communities on projects, start working with your communities on projects.
Hey, Eric.
Yeah.
I have a clarification on the cybersecurity wireless requirements question that was asked earlier.
Yeah.
The reason the question is specifically for election security for precincts with poll books. So just so you know, if you can look into that, that would be fantastic.
Okay. For polls, right?
If we have e-poll books.
Yeah. Okay.
And then another question, is this the pool for emergency public safety dispatch? Doug, are you talking about ARPA? No. Okay. No. This is separate. Not that pool. Okay.
Yeah. The 118 is what will go for broadband infrastructure. There's also going to be a carve out for libraries to do telehealth facilities as well from some of the ARPA money that the state's getting from the Capital Projects Fund, which is kind of exciting. Actually, I shouldn't say kind of. I'd say that I kind of tossed in kind of. That's super exciting. They did a project in Weippe and Orofino, I believe. I think it was Orofino last year, and it's been a great success. And so they want to do more of these, and I'm highly excited about this project, especially because they partnered with Blue Cross of Idaho Foundation. So it's a super exciting sort of thing that they're working on, and we'll hopefully see some more of them. So yeah, BEAD is the huge chunk of money. So again, Idaho will get at least $100 million. Why I say at least $100 million is because I won't know what the full amount is until they basically carve out a portion of $38 billion to each state, which is dependent upon the FCC's maps, which won't be ready until maybe December, January of this year. So that's kind of what we're waiting on right now. But this gives you a sense of kind of what some of the programs that are coming under the BEAD look like. So we have a digital equity component that will be managed by libraries. You have a tribal component where they'll shore up and give more money to tribal governments to help with that oversubscription that happened with the NTIA's tribal broadband grant. There was $1 billion initially allocated for that, and it was oversubscribed by $5 billion. So I would, if you're not already, I would highly be working with your tribal governments, and I'm working with all of them, but I would work with them as well and see if you can leverage some of those dollars that are going out there. And of course, there'll be a future middle mile grant as well, which is yet to be open, but we'll be keeping an eye on and be working to come up with some sort of application for the state of Idaho.
And Eric, another quick question on that. That was, when do you anticipate that these funds will be available, each of the funds that you're talking about?
Well, so capital projects funds, I mean, we hope to have a grant ready to go by later on this year. And then, but if the BEAD, like the infrastructure bill money, won't be ready till 2023.
And has that been appropriated for broadband yet?
No, it has not, because we don't have the full, we don't know the full amount yet. So that has, The 100 million has been appropriated.
I'm sorry, I mean from at the federal level. Because I know not everything in IIJA has been appropriated yet, so I'm wondering about broadband at the federal level.
Oh yeah, I think that yeah, I've heard that. I haven't heard any concerns about the broadband section, the broadband portion. So we're feeling good. Yeah, it's a good question though. But yeah, I think we're okay. I don't think we're waiting on anything, or there says any concern that it won't be. So, okay. So again, from the BEAD, this is kind of, again, very similar requirements. The important difference is that there's going to be a priority to connect unserved locations first. So that's areas without access to 25.3. But again, the technology that needs to be delivered is the same. So those are the same sort of requirements. They'll be looking to kind of leverage community anchor institutions. We also have to prioritize areas with persistent poverty or high poverty areas. Prioritize the speed of time to build the network, the actual broadband speeds that are being delivered. So again, there's going to be a priority on fiber projects and given a higher priority on fiber projects. And then interestingly enough, there's going to be, we need to prioritize demonstrated record on compliance with federal labor and employment laws. So we'll have to be paying attention to those sorts of things and incorporate them into future grants. I would also add too that the guidance has not come out yet for NTIA's infrastructure bill. It will not be ready until probably May, and they currently have they're open for comment, or they have a comment period open right now that closes on February 8th. So if the counties are interested in making any comments or any recommendations about what they would like to see or how they should make sure these funds are able to address the needs in rural communities, it's a good time as any to make those comments. So the other thing too is that to keep in mind is that there's a 25% match requirement unless it's waived, but that match can come from an ISP. There's an you can use some ARPA dollars. We're hashing out right now what that ARPA match could look like and how that would work, especially if a community already spends its ARPA money, how that might work. But anyways, but hasn't been. We don't know yet, so just give me some patience. But just kind of keep in mind that there's 25% match. I expect the ISPs to be the ones covering most of that. So again, just kind of highlighting here. So I said all this stuff already. Again, going to local households. That's the most important part too. So again, the goal is to kind of cover the last mile. So that's really important. So when you're thinking about projects, think about how it's going to deliver to the last mile. So again, what should you be doing now? You could be forming a broadband action team. That's one of the first things you could do. It doesn't have to be anything formal, but you could kind of be gathering together a group of concerned people who want to kind of start working, who want to and have the time to start working on understanding what the broadband landscape looks like in your area. That would lead you then to the next step, which is understanding what your broadband landscape looks like and kind of working on a plan. So once you understand what the problem is, what are maybe some solutions, or who are the partners that you're going to kind of bring in to kind of address that plan or address that gap.
Eric, it looks like we have another question.
Yeah.
What is the delivery timeline for actual fiber? We've heard that it's 18 months out. Is that accurate with your analysis?
It depends on who the ISP is and how big they are, Sarah. That's the way it works. I think if you're going in cold and you're trying to order conduit and fiber, it can be a while. Or if you're one of the larger ISPs and you have a stockpile on hand because you knew that the supply chain shortage was coming and you have a lot on hand, it's probably not going to be that long. But we are hearing that the wait times are increasing. So it's a problem. I mean, the build window, for projects, I think it's going to be at least 2 years, at least. So I expect, we're going to give communities a lot of adequate time to kind of work on these projects. So I think that will make it a little bit easier. But yeah, it's a real problem, certainly. And it's not just conduit and fiber, it's everything. It's radios, it's, I was hearing this fall handholds, so various boxes that you might need, all those sorts of stuff in the supply chain is the issue. I was listening today, saying that 10 years ago, the US had a 40-day supply of semiconductors. And I think yesterday the report came out and said we had a 4-day supply of semiconductors. And again, those semiconductors go in everything, right? It's not just computers, it's your cars, it's your washing machines, your dishwashers, your refrigerators, everything. So anyways, everything's feeling the pinch. So I think from our standpoint, giving as much time to allow communities to kind of work and allowing their partners to work on these projects will be crucial. And then also building in, you want to make sure that I think if a community or an ISP is bidding on a project, they're doing a realistic build up, like an estimate on that too, on that build too. If they come in super low, there may be some questions about, are they actually pricing that reasonably, considering costs are going to go up. Just a reminder that there's lots of money, not just to not just for broadband, but there's a lot of money in infrastructure, in the infrastructure bill. You have partners such as ITD, DEQ. I got a call from the Army Corps of Engineers today to kind of talk about how to partner electric utilities, local, obviously local governments are going to get money. Idaho, the Idaho Commission for Libraries, local schools, all these different organizations are going to have money from the infrastructure bill. But especially when you see things like ITD and DEQ, think about, and I think if you have like a local utility co-op too in your area, how can you partner with all of those organizations to build out your middle mile infrastructure? How can you kind of leverage some of that money that's happening, that's going to be utilized to kind of build out that other infrastructure, and then while the trench is open, put fiber and conduit in there. That I would, even if it's not possible, I would be having all those conversations, and I'd be structuring, and I'd be making sure that all of your planning people are thinking about it when they see anything that involves digging up a trench. How can you put more fiber and conduit in there? Because again, it's important. Everything, like more technology, we're now in the Internet of Things. Everything is going to require more bandwidth, and so if you're a community, you need to have more of that infrastructure in the ground, regardless of where it comes from. Like if it comes, what grant it comes from. So,
Eric, on that front,
Yeah.
It looks like we have a question about ITD. Do you know if they're looking to have an open trench policy?
They are working. There is some, I am aware of some legislation that's being worked on, but that's about as much as I can say for a dig once policy. So, but yeah, I'm aware of it. So, and I think it's important to encourage, ITD may have one, but does your county have one? What's your policy? And again, like this goes back when you talk about partnerships, it's not just roads. It's also like, what about like for cities? What about like when there's water and wastewater projects, all those, like all the water treatment now and all the water pumps are being remotely managed. What do you have in your county that's being remotely managed? So again, if they're doing work or someone's doing some work and it's not conventional broadband infrastructure, but it's other related infrastructure where they're doing trenches, why aren't you putting you should be putting conduit and fiber in the ground? Or if you don't have any, you should be working to find an ISP in the area who wants to do that. Because I guarantee you, if there's a trench open, an ISP is going to want to put conduit and fiber in there. So kind of be thinking about that as a process, I think, for the county and for local governments is really, really crucial.
Another question on
Yeah.
Related, is the state looking to use any of these funds to build up the middle mile? We're talking about the highway.
Sure, of course.
And keep it as a state asset. As far as I know, I think they're still trying to decide. Is that
yeah, I think that's fair. I think there's still discussions being had, and I think it's kind of still open for discussion. A lot of the money that we're going to have as a state to spend on broadband goes to last mile. I think there's a recognition that middle mile is really important too. But to Sarah's point, again, there's some discussions right now about dig once policies. But again, who manages that infrastructure is challenging and complicated. So and I think it's not just for the state, but it's also for a county. Like if you have a county and you're saying we want to have a dig once policy, but then who's going to, like for county infrastructure, who's going to manage it? Like, and then what, like if we dig a trench, like who's going to be in that trench? All these sorts of things are really complicated, but important things to kind of start thinking about, right? Because it's not just, it's like, okay, so we dig a trench and we have 20 ISPs that are interested. Well, how are you selecting which ISP is going to go in there? What, like, are you going to charge them to be in there? If so, what are you going to charge them to be in there? If you're not going to charge them, what, like, again, how do you select and how do you make it fair? Because again, these are limited, like rights of ways they're not something that you have, you don't have a ton of space. You can't put 1,000 conduits in a right of way. So again, how do you make those decisions? How do you figure out and how do you prioritize? Who's going to be in there is a complicated process that we haven't done. We're starting to do this now, but we need to do more as a state. And that's when we look at like our other partners, like, I've had conversations with Utah, and you're looking at what they've done. They've been doing this for, more than a decade. And that's why they're highly effective in what they've done. And it takes resources, it takes people, it takes manpower to kind of do all this sort of stuff. But it's a great time to start. And I think to this point, if you do anything, don't forget to talk about it with, make sure you're talking about your successes. It's several, I think a lot of times, especially in the economic development world, I feel like we jump from one, leaping from one to another, one project to another, and especially when there's so many, and I know that we're all so busy, but taking the time to kind of celebrate, and especially as a community, patting yourselves on the back is really, really crucial, and it helps spread the word, helps make people aware of things that are happening in the community, but it also allows you time to kind of breathe and then just say, yeah, no, we have done a good job and we have made a difference in the community. So don't forget to do that. We have resources too on our page. So again, but you can always reach out to me with questions as well, which you have done a splendid job of already. So anyways, so don't be afraid to reach out.
All right, are there any other questions for Eric? This has been really helpful, Eric, and I know it's just the tip of the iceberg too. So
Sherry asked I didn't see the question. Sherry asked the open trench policy. We can talk, Sherry. You can call me, we'll chat.
And then Eric, you're going to be at our conference next week also, right? Doing a workshop. Right.
Yeah.
So if any of you want to, that are attending the conference, have more questions and stuff, you can write them down, bring them with you. Eric will be there. And Eric, are you have folks asking about your contact info?
Oh, yes. I need to put it on my slides, but I'll just type it here.
I'll just put it in the chat.
Yeah.
And then any of you can always reach out to me too. And
Yep.
Sounds like Eric's okay with it. So I'm happy to connect you as well.
Yeah, I'll just tell you, please don't leave me a voicemail because it's like the worst way to get a hold of me. But if you send me an email, and then you can always text me stuff. That works too. Just try not to overwhelm me with too many emails. And then if I don't get back to you in a week, ping me again. It's not because I don't care, just because I probably got 200 emails that day. So anyways.
And also feel free to include me on
definitely
questions that you have for Eric, because sometimes it might be something he already answered, and then I might be able to help too. We have
something that I don't know, but Sarah definitely knows. That is also
that's probably
that is also a reasonable option.
One more question, Eric, and then we'll sign off because we want to be done at 3. What pot of monies is going for public safety communications?
There is a pot of money going to emergency 911 to kind of help them build out. I'll look that up and get back to you, Doug. Well, I'll email Sarah and she can send it out. I mean, it's not appropriated yet. So that's the problem, is that it's just kind of out there. And they're waiting to kind of get it approved. You can the way to kind of think about this is that there's, I want to say, I think it's at least a couple million, I think, at least. but it's really good. I've
A
been
couple million for Idaho?
I think there's a couple million for the emergency the E911 improvements is what I remember seeing. So
Okay. And then Eric, would you send us your slides so we can put them up on our website?
I will.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Eric. This was awesome. We'll see you next week. And
Thanks,
hopefully we'll
everybody.
see everybody else next week too.
Have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thanks.